Why is it that photographers just don't talk about this topic? It's a crucial skill to us in our image making. It's something that could make the difference between an amazing picture and something that's pretty average. That skill is timing. Pressing that shutter button at the time that's most critical. Pressing that shutter button at the peak of the action. This is something that really makes a difference to your images. So I'm going to talk about it today. That instant that you choose to capture in your camera is an important part of your image. It could be a fleeting expression on your model or your client. It could be a glimmer of sunlight coming through at that time. It can be a particular position, a pose, motion in your image just captured at the right time. Henri Cartier-Bresson spoke about the decisive moment. A moment is a small portion of time. So knowing when to push that shutter to capture your image forever is a great skill to have. Of course, in photography, we don't always just capture a moment. We can capture a period of time. We can show motion over a period of time. But still, knowing when to start that period of time can be crucial to the success of that image. Now, I'm not perfect at this. I often get it wrong. Sometimes I'll ask my client or my model to repeat an action over and over until I know that I've nailed the image as best I can. Now, modern cameras can shoot in burst mode. They can shoot thousands of images, one after the other, and they can shoot a lot of images per second. That doesn't mean that you're going to capture that perfect moment. I find that shooting a single image gives me the best option of being able to capture that. I need to anticipate. I need to allow for my shutter lag, because there is a lag between when you push that button and when your picture gets taken. Sports photographers in the old days understood all this. They didn't have the burst modes that we have now. They needed to capture one image at the peak of the motion, and they got very good at it. They would push the shutter at a certain time just before the peak of the action, so that they knew that their shutter was firing at that particular peak. So whether you're doing portrait photography, street photography, landscape, tabletop, wildlife, nature, or sport, timing will be important in most genres of photography. Now, I shoot people, so I'm mostly looking for that particular moment when the pose, the expression, the lighting, the composition all come together. I'm going to show you a whole range of images that I've taken over the years and explain the things that I've done right and the things that I've done wrong in those images with regards to timing. Now, of course, timing doesn't just mean that instant that you push the shutter. Timing can involve planning your shoot, the time of year, the time of day, the weather conditions, the tide times. All of those sorts of things come into the timing of your shoot and the timing of your image. But we're concentrating mostly on that short period of time when you actually push the shutter. Now, when I'm shooting people, posing is important. I need to try and make my people look as good as they possibly can. So it means posing them in a way that they look attractive. And often there's only that split couple of seconds when it looks perfect and it looks great. So that's the time that I need to push the shutter. But I also need to be conscious of their expression. Timing with expressions is important. As you can see in some of these images, the expressions in the image are the thing that really make it work. Now, posing generally is a collaboration between the model or the client and the photographer. The photographer can suggest a pose, but it's up to the person in front of the camera to tweak it, to make it feel right. And that little bit of tweaking, that little bit of movement, that settling of the body can make all the difference to how she looks in that pose and the expression on her face. But ultimately, it's up to the photographer to press that shutter at the time when everything aligns. Compare these images. I prefer the last one, simply because it's a pose that to me looks natural and it looks more attractive. You may think a different image looks good. It's up to you, it's a personal choice. I've just spoken about expressions. Expressions in a portrait or in a photograph can make or break that image. The expression is an important part of the whole thing because our eye goes straight to that person's face, straight to their eyes, and we can see if they feel comfortable or they don't feel comfortable. Sometimes the photographer will elicit various different expressions from the model or the client. Generally, more experienced models or experienced people in front of the camera can do this a little bit better. or actors can do it as well. But the photographer might be looking for a happy look without a smile, might be looking for some sadness, might be looking for determination, might be looking for a deadpan fashion model type of shot. There are lots of different expressions that we can do, and it's up to the photographer to elicit those in the model and to capture them when they're there. Eye contact with the camera is often important. If the photographer doesn't want eye contact with the camera, then he needs to tell the model or tell the client which way to look and where to look, to have control over that eye line when they take the photograph. There's generally that one expression that happens when the model or the client seems to be themselves. They haven't got that guarded expression that we often get when we're relating to someone that we don't know. But the interaction between the photographer and the model is the thing that's going to get that relaxed, unguarded look. Have a look at these images. You'll see the difference between the two. Not that the first one's any different to the second one, quality-wise, but the expression is different. It gives a different feel. The model has a different expression on her face, and that gives us a different interpretation of how she's feeling at the time. The expression needs to suit the mood of the photograph. Now, I take photographs for lots of different purposes. I'm primarily a boudoir photographer, but I take photographs for public relations purposes. I take photographs for headshots for business. I take a whole range of people photographs. So the expression on that face needs to suit the mood of or the intention of the photograph. If I'm shooting a business portrait, I want an expression that's going to give confidence and trustworthiness in that face. If I'm shooting a boudoir image, then I want something that's a little bit more sexy looking, a little bit more provocative towards the camera. So I need to communicate these things to my client so that that expression matches the mood of the image, and I need to press that shutter at the correct time to capture that mood in those eyes. Now, when we have people in motion, I often shoot people walking, people jumping, people doing various activities. I need to be able to time that shutter release so that I capture that particular body shape or that particular pose that's going to work well in my images. As I said, I often repeat it. I often ask the client or the model to repeat it so that I can be sure of grabbing it at that right time. And generally, you know, when you've grabbed it at the right time, you know that you've done it. But capturing people in motion is not the easiest thing in the world. I need to anticipate when that perfect pose is going to happen. When I'm shooting people walking or running, I much prefer to have that front foot down. I've mentioned this in other videos, but having that front foot down just gives the posture, gives the pose, just makes that person look stronger. So I need to time it so that that front foot is just going down. In some of these images, I haven't achieved that. If I'm asking my client to jump, I need to shoot that image at the instant that their body shape, their expression, everything comes together. It doesn't always happen, but we just repeat it a couple of times until we nail it. I do a lot of dance photography, and anticipating dance poses is not the easiest thing in the world because I'm not experienced, I'm not knowledgeable about dance theory and dance poses. So it helps me a great deal to have somebody there who is. A dance teacher, or the model's dance teacher, a parent, somebody who knows a lot about dance, to be able to tell me when I've anticipated that shot correctly and when I've captured it properly. Generally, when we're shooting dance, we would use flash because most of the time we want to freeze that motion. We want to freeze that pose in the position that we want it. We can use slow shutter speeds with a bit of shutter drag and things like that, as you can see here, but still, the anticipation and the precise nature of that shutter release will really make a difference to how that pose looks. Sometimes the need arises to coordinate multiple subjects or multiple elements in your image at the same time. Then it becomes a little bit more difficult because all of these elements may not be at their peak at the same time. I do a lot of beach photography, shooting models and clients at the beach. So I have things to deal with like waves, like people in the background, like background elements and things. I like to use the waves, if I can, to help with my composition, to draw the viewer's eye into the picture or through the picture, depending on the intent. So shooting at the instant when that wave is in the right place makes a difference. If I'm shooting a model in the surf, I want that wave to hit her at the precise time that I'm pressing the shutter because I want a little bit of spray. I want a few droplets. I want to freeze that foamy surface of the wave in that image to give it more interest and to give it more immediacy. This shot, taken at Newcastle Baths at sunrise. I had a dancer that I needed to have in the pose. I had a swimmer that was coming past. It wasn't my swimmer, it was just a random swimmer that was there. And we had a seagull up on the pole on the left-hand side. So having everything come together wasn't easy. I knew that the dancer could hold that pose for a certain time. I knew that that swimmer needed to be caught as their arm was coming out of the water. And I just hoped that that seagull cooperated, which it did. When the swimmer's arm came out of the water, the dancer was in the pose and the seagull turned to profile, which is the way I wanted him in the shot. So sometimes everything does come together magically, but other times you have to work at it. Look at this shot of my son. This was taken all in camera, all in one shot. I was in the background taking care of the spinning steel wool and shooting with my remote control so that my shutter fired at the time that it needed to. I was watching Samuel with the ball and trying to time it so that the image would work properly. And it worked well. I did 2 or 3 shots and one of those worked amazingly well. So here are a few other shots taken on the same night of various other things, just playing around with stuff. But even in these shots, I'm trying to time it so that the elements of the image come together well.